Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm your host, John DeBona, and I'm glad you're here. This is where we cut through the noise and break down the issues happening in our country. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that's too important to ignore: Project 2025 and its dangerous attack on women's rights. We must resist Project 2025. Today, we're joined by someone who has seen the inner workings of the people behind Project 2025. Kirsten Heffron was a high level Republican who worked directly with many of the leaders pushing this radical agenda. But like many of us, she saw the dangerous direction the party was heading and she left. She's here to share what she witnessed firsthand and explain why Project 2025 is such a threat to women's rights and health care. We don't have to embellish how radical Project 2025 is. It's right here in the text. But we are going to break it down for you word by word, because to defeat Project 2025, we must actively resist Project 2025. And at the end of this video, we're going to give you specific steps to do just that. But first, I want you all to go to your preferred social media channels, search for Turn Left Pack, and subscribe. You've got to see our Resist Project 2025 Reel series. Well, joining me today is Kirsten Heffron, who used to work with the very people behind Project 2025. She's here to walk us through what's at stake and why this is such a critical issue. Kristen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell
Glad to be
us,
here.
tell us a little bit about this. You were involved with the Republican
Yeah, so
folks?
I did not work for Heritage, but I worked with them a lot. And I actually used to work for the National Right to Work Committee. I was their director of public affairs for some time. And worked in other capacities for other conservative organizations. I kind of, for background, I kind of grew up in the right wing bubble, and so I went to like a Christian college, and when I graduated, went to work for the Republicans because that's what you did. And let me tell you, there is nothing like working for the Republican Party to let you see up close and personal how how sick it really can be. It's like just figuring out like up close and personal that the like despite all of the platitudes they like to serve up about freedom and personal responsibility, no, it's really a lot of it is just the cruelty is the point. The it's a spiteful worldview. And so, in working for them and being exposed to that, I gradually learned that I didn't feel the same way as those people. And once I started, seeing it for what it really was, I departed the right, and I tried to get out of politics for a while, but it sucked me back in. And honestly, everything that I do now, politically related, is for the Democratic Party, for the progressive movement. I It's very personal to me. I feel like I have a responsibility to kind of undo some of the damage that I sort of unwittingly helped to do as a young uh, political operative. So here I am. I guess ratting out my old employers, but without people like the Lincoln Project and others who have come out of the conservative movement and are kind of blowing a whistle on how messed up things have gotten on that side. I don't think we'd be where we are right now. So I'm I'm proud to be part of that tradition, I suppose.
Standing. Well, thank you so much for being here. Let's dive into what's at stake: abortion bans and reproductive health care. How is Project 2025 using abortion bans to control not just women's health care, but their bodies and choices overall? And is it really about morality or is it about power?
So the complicated thing about the so-called pro-life movement is that it's really both. The leaders of the movement are absolutely motivated by power, control, but they are bolstered by large numbers of genuine, like earnest rank and file supporters who truly believe that the movement is about saving babies, about saving innocent lives. Um, so I want to be careful when we talk about the pro-life movement. Um, there's the leaders of that movement, the people you see on the news all the time, the legislators that are pushing these awful bans, these bills, and then there are the people who are making that possible. And they don't all know, like all of the rank and file people don't necessarily know what it is they're actually fighting for. And I think that is borne out when you see how the vote actually goes down in some of these very red states, after these abortion bans were passed post Roe v. Wade. When you actually put it to the voters, overwhelmingly they're like, wait, we didn't want to go that far. So there's a little bit of mix there. But yeah, if you go to an event like, say, the March for Life in DC, what you are hearing from the people on the ground there, when they interview the bus loads full of people, they're going to be saying very different things than what you're going to hear behind closed doors in the leadership meetings of that movement. So Project 2025, and by that I mean the actual document itself, not like the whole idea of it, the whole program. And I actually want to stop there just to make sure that like your viewers know what Project 2025 really is when we talk about it. There is a freely available PDF document. It's about 900 pages of really gory reading, but it is a framework document put out by the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank that works very closely with some of the more right-wing politicians, especially on social issues. And this is, they actually did, like, if you remember Project Red Map back in 2010, it was kind of the same thing. They organized that in plain sight. There was a website about it. You could go and see what they planned on doing. But back then, no one took it seriously enough. This time, we're not making the same mistake. We're talking about it, which is good. But I do see a lot of misinformation. Like people, they know Project 2025 exists and that it's bad. They just are not sure what it is. So when I say Project 2025, I'm talking about this document, Mandate for Leadership, or whatever they're calling it. You've got it up on the screen there, I think.
Yep.
And it goes through all of their policy priorities, should they get back into power in the White House. So Project 2025 is kind of like a window into some of what is said in these like closed door planning sessions among the pro-life movement. But it's, since it's gone through like editing and proofreading, I assume it's not as blunt as you would hear in those meetings. I mean, some of the stuff that I heard in those closed door meetings was just appalling, the things that they would say about women and the assumptions that they made. And we've all heard it. We've seen Republican politicians, especially at the state level, but sometimes federal, saying things like, oh, well, a woman's body has a way of shutting all that down, and or maybe they should keep their legs closed or whatever. It's you see it sometimes. The mask slips, but it's always like the mask is always slipped behind in those closed door meetings. It's really ugly, the things that they say about women facing unplanned pregnancies. So anyway, it's got this, when you read the document, it's got this very kind of like sugar-coated vanilla veneer to it compared to how they actually talk amongst themselves. But like even then, like if you kind of read between the lines, you can kind of see what they're getting at, and you can kind of like get a sense of what was said leading up to this. Like there's this section that I had highlighted from it talking about there's an undercurrent in this document that is basically they don't want women to be able to leave bad husbands, bad partners. They very much want women to be stuck in relationships, and to be forced to, like, should they get pregnant, they should be forced to go through with the pregnancy. They should be forced to have that baby. And this section says, working fathers are essential to the well-being and development of their children. But the United States is experiencing a crisis of fatherlessness that is ruining our children's futures. In the overwhelming number of cases, fathers insulate children from physical and sexual abuse, financial difficulty or poverty, incarceration, teen pregnancy, poor educational outcomes, high school failure, and a host of behavioral and psychological problems. Now, I would like to note, none of this is cited or sourced or anything. Like these assertions are throughout this document. These like really intense, like facts. But there's literally no like backing it up. There's no science behind it. There's no studies cited. Like literally, they're stating these opinions as if they're just established fact. And of course, you should build policy on this. Um, so it continues. By contrast, homes with non related boyfriends, and it's got scare quotes around boyfriends, present are among the most dangerous place for a child to be. Health and Human Services should prioritize married father engagement in its messaging, health, and welfare policies. Yeah, like it reads like a bitter divorced dad wrote it, and maybe it was, although the byline actually belongs to Heritage Vice President Roger Severino, who is not divorced but married to one of the scariest women in DC. If you look his wife up, wow. She's it's you see those memes, the misogyny is coming from inside the house. That'd be her.
Wow.
Um, but anyway, I've been in the room where these so-called facts are bandied about. And the way it's usually said in the privacy of those rooms is that, women, they can't be trusted. They need their husbands to provide and protect. And if you let them get divorced, for just any old reason, they're just, they're going to shack up with the first child molesting ex murderer who comes along, flashing the D, big incel energy here with this document. Um, and can I just note that it's interesting that men only come in two flavors, according to this take. Either they're married and therefore totally safe, or they're unmarried and very dangerous. So, having been wed previously to the married and dangerous variety, I have to call it BS on that. But still, this take is not the flex that these incel dudes seem to think it is. Um, there's also this bit about, government should ensure that it is not promoting abortion as healthcare. It should fund studies into the risks and complications of abortion and ensure that it corrects and does not promote misinformation regarding the comparative health and psychological benefits of childbirth versus the health and psychological risks of intentionally taking a human life through abortion. Talk about your loaded language. It sounds almost benign with the talk of funding studies and avoiding misinformation, but like the devil is in the details here. They're not saying they should fund studies into risk and complications to see if they exist or to document them for safety's sake or anything. No, they're saying they should basically set out to prove that these risks exist and then use them as scare tactics. Never mind that abortion is much less dangerous than carrying a pregnancy to term and giving birth by every imaginable measure. They just want to fund propaganda to frighten women away from abortion care. Likewise, if you look at the loaded language talking about the benefits of childbirth as opposed to the risks of abortion, like that's even in their language, in their own document internally, they have to use this leading language. So look, as a mom myself, I'll tell you right now, the only benefit of childbirth to me was getting to take home my like healthy, wanted children at the end. Both times I had my kids, it almost killed me. I will spare you the gory details, but it was rough, and it caused me more than a few lifelong health issues that I have to deal with. To me, of course, it was worth it because I very much wanted my children and I love them very much. But that was actually the first massive chink in my anti-abortion armor back then, because after suffering through that twice, and that was like I had fantastic insurance and like I had sick leave and like I had the best setup imaginable, but still it was really hard. And how in the world could I demand another woman risk all of that for a pregnancy she never wanted in the first place?
What would you say to women who believe that they'll be able to work around these bans or think that these laws won't affect them personally? Are they underestimating the impact?
I mean, look, these laws, they affect everyone regardless of whether you live in a blue state, a red state, whether you have a uterus or don't have a uterus. The way that these laws are being written, especially in the red states, and the way that Project 2025 is written, they're going to be monitoring everyone across state lines for evidence of having participated in an abortion. Somebody from Texas wants to fly to California to get abortion care, and they take an Uber to the clinic. Texas can and probably will sue that Uber driver. And what do you think the net result of millions of unwanted children is going to be on the social systems? We already have trouble placing children in suitable homes. This madness is going to take us back to like the Charles Dickens days with orphanages full of abandoned children who are like ripe for abuse and exploitation. And this is all brought to you by the party that loves to make noise about saving the children from human trafficking. But what do they think is going to happen to all of these excess children who go into the system? It's we don't have the resources to handle what we have now. I don't, even if this doesn't directly impact you and your uterus, it's going to impact society and you somehow.
Absolutely. These abortion bans aren't just a political talking point, they're an all out assault on women's bodies and their financial security. We're going to talk more about the personal and economic impacts of this after the break.
When I ran for Congress, we flipped more Trump voters blue than any other congressional race in the country. We did this by calling out the GOP's lies and speaking truth against their million-dollar attack ads. I've now partnered with Turn Left, and we're taking the fight to the extremists like Marge the Trainwreck Green, Ted Cruz, and Josh Hawley, to name a few. And I'm asking each and every one of you all to donate $25 today to the group that is absolutely helping to send these jackaloons packing. It's time to speak truth to power and turn left.
Well, Project 2025 doesn't just stop at abortion bans. They're also coming for IVF treatments. For couples struggling with infertility, this is nothing short of devastating. Imagine having to give up the dream of starting a family because some bureaucrat decided IVF isn't moral. Kirsten, IVF is often seen as a lifeline for families who can't conceive naturally. Why is Project 2025 targeting these treatments? What's their end game? And do they want fewer families or only certain types of families?
So, IVF has always presented a particular problem for the so-called pro-life movement because of its sort of dual nature. On the one hand, the point of the procedure is to create a viable pregnancy, but on the other, it's also standard practice to create like excess numbers of embryos so that a patient can choose the healthiest ones to implant. So those extra embryos have been at the center of a lot of internal like debate and controversy among the right, and it comes out in opposition to potentially life-saving stem cell research or debates over things like snowflake adoption, where people implant unused discarded embryos and bring them to term. And that brings into like the ethics of gestational surrogacy and all that. So the true heart of the pro-life movement has always been sort of like hardcore traditionalist Catholics. And that has presented serious messaging issues for them because reproductive technologies, have obviously become much more available and much more popular over the last, 30, 40 years. And according to the Catholic Church, IVF is sinful not just because of the, excess wasted embryos, but and hang with me here, this is going to get a little like theologically nerdy, but what it says in the Catechism is that it separates the marital act from its intended purpose of procreation. So that's a direct quote from the Catechism. That incidentally is also why the church, the Catholic Church, frowns upon condoms, birth control, masturbation, oral sex, gay sex, all of it. It's not as simple as this is different and so it's bad. It's this whole like theology of this is the purpose of sex, is to make babies. And so that, in the Catholic Church, every time sex is had, it's basically if a man is going to get there, he better be getting there into a non-contracepting human vagina. There's no other way to say it, or the act is rendered intrinsically disordered. So that's the theology behind these, like when you hear, oh, like they want to ban contraception, that sounds crazy, but the core of that movement really does believe that contraception is deeply, gravely sinful. Now, obviously, they can't just come out and say all that. It's like, because it sounds crazy. Like most Americans aren't Catholic, and even most American Catholics either don't know, ignore, or like outright oppose some of these more stringent rules and recommendations of the Catechism when it comes to their sex lives. I mean, I think the last statistics I saw said that like 90% of Catholic women use contraception at some point in their lives. Like, obviously, this is not a mainstream kind of view, but it is the predominantly held view of the people who are pushing for these laws. So, I mean, obviously, if they just rolled up on Fox News saying outright, we want to ban all contraception and bring back anti-sodomy laws and anti-fornication laws, people would freak out. They'd riot. For that matter, if they campaigned on a total abortion ban nationally, they'd get their butts handed to them at the ballot box, just as they have in every state that has put abortion rights to a vote of the people. But ultimately, my point here is that you have to understand that at the heart of the so-called pro-life movement, this is who they are and it is what they want. This is a theocratic movement to its core, no matter how much they would like to pretend that that's not the case. And if we let them get what they want, like Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale gives a pretty darn accurate take on what that might look like. Gilead. If you prefer, I hear the TV adaptation on Hulu is pretty good. I haven't seen it.
Good analogy there. How does this ban on IVF impact the larger societal fabric? Are we looking at a future where only the wealthy or the politically connected will be able to access fertility treatments?
Well, I mean, Republicans have kind of forever been the party of like rules for thee and not for me. I mean, like how many, let's be real here. How many abortions do you think a guy like Trump has directly paid for in his lifetime while still, advocating for these bans? But also, I mean, I think that we are already living in a reality where fertility care is hard to access for a lot of people. Every couple I know who has resorted to ART to build their family has done so after a long, costly, emotional, physical ordeal, usually with some amount of deep heartbreak along the way. Only 15 states require insurers to cover any fertility therapies at all, and IVF costs tens of thousands of dollars every cycle. So it's already not that accessible to anybody who's not rich and well-connected. But certainly an outright ban would be much more trivial for the rich and well-connected to evade by, they could travel overseas, find an ethically flexible doctor willing to do things off the books. But yeah, I mean, yes, will it make it even harder for people to access? Sure. But I feel like that's, we're already living that reality.
Indeed. Taking away IVF treatments will destroy the dreams of countless families. The implications are far reaching and they go deeper than just healthcare. They affect the future of family and society itself. We're going to dig into this more a little after the break.
Today, we have an amazing show for you. Join myself, special guests, and celebrities.
What's going on, Ice-T? Andrew Yang.
Somebody else was hopping on.
Oh, hold on.
What's going on, Battle?
As we roast GQP Jackaloons.
He may not be a real businessman, but he is one hell of a con artist. That's what it is. That's what they got indicted for. Treason and sedition.
And addresses the headlines of the day.
They must be held accountable.
Live streaming every night.
I got more time in a friggin' port in a friggin' combat zone than you've probably got in the military.
This is Ojeda Live.
Well, Project 2025 doesn't just affect healthcare, it hits people where it hurts the most, their wallets. Imagine struggling to make ends meet, only to find out that you have to travel hundreds of miles and spend thousands of dollars just to access basic reproductive health care. Kirsten, how is Project 2025 deliberately targeting low-income women with these policies? And is this designed to create a system where only the wealthy have reproductive rights?
Well, make no mistake, Project 2025 isn't just going to affect low-income women. It's every bit as targeted at wealthy women. Will it be easier for wealthy women to evade bans? I mean, certainly, just like it's easier for wealthy women to do just about anything in this late capitalist dystopia we find ourselves living in. But, and of course, women who are dependent on the state for healthcare access or financial assistance, they're going to be under additional scrutiny and stress compared to those with private coverage and healthy bank accounts. But look, when you read through this document, the message that's repeated throughout, it doesn't discriminate. It applies to everyone. And the message is, we don't trust women. We don't trust them to make good decisions about who they want to sleep with, who they want to cohabitate with, when they want to become mothers, or even whether they want to. We don't trust them to decide how they want to build their families. We don't trust them to decide when a relationship is no longer healthy for them. We don't trust them to spend child support payments responsibly. What's worse is Project 2025 aims to make this the official policymaking ethos of this nation from the ground up. There's a provision in there requiring that medical schools lose their federal funding if they don't actively discourage their students from learning how to perform abortion care and related procedures. It means a whole generation of American doctors might graduate medical school unable to provide basic life-saving care to pregnant patients who are facing medical emergencies because our government didn't want them to have that knowledge. Like, what's that going to do to our economy? Like, talk about brain drain, right? There's another provision recommending against government funding of early childhood education programs, saying that instead we should just pay mothers to stay home. I assume the where they belong after that must have gotten cut off by like a PR savvy editor or something. And of course, there's the constant drumbeat throughout the document aimed at forcing gay and trans people back into the closet and banning them from family life. So this is, as much as this is, like any other injustice is going to have an outsized impact on, on the less fortunate, on those who are facing, financial challenges and things of that nature, marginalized people. Obviously, they're going to bear the brunt of it, but this really affects every strata of society. And there are, even after the immediacy, like the immediate horror of abortion bans and the lives that will cost, in terms of pregnant patients dying for lack of life-saving care, that's the immediate horror. But there's all of these little like delayed explosion time bombs written into it as well that won't necessarily have an effect, until like 10 years down the line. But some of those effects might be even worse than the horrors we're going to see immediately. So, I mean, this document is rotten from the ground up and, all the way to the sky. And I urge anybody who's watching this, just make sure you've got a plan to vote. Make sure that you're talking to everybody about this. Go read some of it, or at least, if you don't want to read all 900 pages, and I can't blame you, go find like a real reliable reporter who has gone and done that work for you, so that you can speak intelligently, about this to people, because it's so important that people know that this is the plan. And if Trump should get elected, if they get control of Congress or in the Senate, this is where we're headed. And it's not a trip we want to take.
Indeed. In conclusion, I want to say thank you for joining us today, Kirsten. You've given us a chilling inside look into the minds behind Project 2025 and why this agenda is more dangerous than most people realize. This is more than just policy. It's a calculated assault on our freedoms and rights, and we need to act now before it's too late. Project 2025 will not only ban abortion, it will force women to travel across state lines, spend money they don't have, and subject them to unnecessary risks, all while stripping their rights. This isn't about protecting life. It's about controlling women's bodies, futures, and financial security. They want to take us back decades, but we can't let that happen. We need to fight back. Because if we don't, Project 2025 will reshape the very fabric of our society into one where only the wealthy and politically connected have access to health care, freedom, and basic human rights. The time to act is now.